So the OHSAA can do the right thing now, or they can do the right thing later with a whole lot of egg on their face, because this is happening one way or the other.
They did the right thing now.
And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is, Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
Hey, it's Chuck, and welcome in. So we had a big development in the Trey McNutt versus the Ohio High School Athletic Association case that we have discussed previously. And if you're not familiar with that case, I'll give you a little backstory. So that rule is a rule for spring. Hey, it's Chuck, and welcome in. We had a big development in the Trey McNutt versus the Ohio High School Athletic Association case. And if you're not familiar with that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of backstory here. So just over a month ago, the infamous no spring football in Ohio rule by the Ohio High School Athletic Association came roaring back into the news. And if you're unfamiliar with that rule, it's a rule in Ohio that prevents football players from playing any organized football, 7-on-7, flag football, any organized football in the spring window of this date to this date. And the rule is intended to entice those football players to participate in spring sports. And the theory behind it is, if you don't get those players to participate in the spring sports, then those spring sports won't have enough participants and eventually they will die, especially at smaller schools. So football players aren't allowed to play football for the benefit of some other sport, even though many of those guys would never even play that other sport anyway. It's absolutely absurd, and it always has been, though it is a noble thing. I mean, it is well-intentioned. But it's not fair to those guys that don't want to play spring sports. They want to play football. But not only is it unfair, it's held a lot of Ohio high school football players back. Now, this rule was common in the U.S. years ago. It wasn't unique to Ohio. But most states did away with it that had it on the books in the 90s and the early 2000s, but not the Ohio High School Athletic Association. They held strong with that rule. And they held strong with that rule, even in the face of Urban Meyer, who in 2013 made a big pitch to them to try to get this rule off the books. Now, Urban did it for selfish reasons. That period just ended up being good for him to go go scout high school football players and see if maybe he was, on the fence about someone to give him an offer. So it was self-serving for him, but it was also detrimental to those kids who Urban never got to go see, who may have gotten that offer from Ohio State or that offer from Akron or Bowling Green or Miami, Ohio, because those coaches couldn't go look at him either. And other coaches from out of state. So all those coaches in Ohio, when they had that time to go look at those players, they went somewhere else. This rule also contributed to another thing we've all noticed over the last 40 years. Ohio produces way fewer quarterbacks and wide receivers than any other state that puts out as much college talent as we do. We're on the short list for the most talent put into colleges, but wide receivers and quarterbacks way down. And a big reason for that is a lot of Ohio high school football has been running Stone Age offenses forever. They've been very slow to adapt to new age offenses. But a lot of those guys could supplement that lack of coaching in that department by going to 7-on-7 tournaments and playing for other coaches in spring. So it's held that back as well. And not only that, there's a whole lot of recognition that you get at those kind of tournaments. That 7-on-7 circuit, it's extremely social. It's about networking as much as it is about football. And it's a who's who in the world of recruiting and scouting and the people who do the rankings. It's about exposure. And in some cases, that exposure could be the difference of a kid being the 65th ranked player at his position or a top 200 overall. And there's some positions where being ranked 15 or 40th is the difference between an Ohio State offer and an Akron offer. It's a big deal. And in the state of Ohio, in 4 years, we are going to see how big of a deal it was. Now, I was furious when I saw the number one safety in Ohio, Trey McNutt, now the number one safety in the country, had been suspended by the Ohio High School Athletic Association for playing in a 7-on-7 tournament in the spring window. I did a little 7-minute reaction video at the time. Trey saw it, his mom Latoya saw it, and I ended up speaking to them about the case, a little backstory on the rule from my perspective, and we've kept in touch since then. And Trey was not going to take his suspension by the OHSAA sitting down because he recognized how unjust the rule was. So he scheduled himself another 7-on-7 tournament the following week. And he was ready to move out of the state to play his senior year if they wanted to keep up with the suspensions here. And that wasn't garbage. Trey and his mom, Latoya, had decided early on that they were that far into this. They weren't backing down. They received a little bit of criticism, mostly support, but a little bit for going about this the wrong way. As in, if you didn't like the rule, the proper way was to try to get it changed, not just go play in a 7-on-7 tournament. But the truth is, not only did they not know about this rule when Trey played in that first 7-on-7 tournament, but his mom, Latoya, cleared it with the head coach at Shaker 3 weeks in advance. So that criticism can go right out the window because she went above and beyond what I think most people would have done. So how embarrassing that the number one safety in the country out of the state of Ohio might have to leave the state of Ohio to play his football in his senior year somewhere else. The OHSAA commission would have been in a pretty hot seat. And all the Ohio high school football fans and all the rabid Ohio State fans who know very well that Trey McNutt is a very big Ohio State priority recruit would have been quite irritated over this. And that's why Trey was the perfect guy and maybe the only guy that could have gotten this done. And many people in his position would have said, that's not my responsibility. And I would have understood, and so would you. That's cool. They'd have said, I'm going to take my little 1-game suspension and be done with this. But he said, no, this isn't right, and I'm not going to take it. And it sounds silly that I'm making a much bigger deal about this than it should be. I hear the words coming out of my mouth. But when you're the only one that can get something done, when Urban Meyer himself couldn't get it done, and you stand up and risk personal sacrifice for something that's not right, no matter how big or small it is, I think it's an awesome story. And I'm going to give it some props. Props for the effort, props for the potential sacrifice. But luckily, there's not going to be any sacrifice in this story because we got ourselves a happy ending. Trey texted me last night, stone cold as ever. It's done. That's it. That's all he said. It's done. The OHSAA is now expected to toss the rule and Trey's suspension with it, clearing the way for all future Ohio high school football players to be able to play football whenever they want. And Trey's suspension is gone. So kudos to Trey and Latoya. And to be honest, kudos to the Ohio High School Athletic Association, because many times we see organizations like this dig their heels in, even when they know something's wrong, and stand by it just to make a stand and say, I'm the boss and nobody can challenge us. So props to Doug Youth, the director of the OHSAA, and everybody in the OHSAA for recognizing that this is not fair to those kids and they don't need to stand by this. It no longer matters what it took to get them to make that decision. It just matters that they made the right one, because the end result is the result that everybody wanted here. I love Ohio high school football. I love Ohio high school football history. And this story and the happy ending of this story is going to go down in Ohio high school football history. About the time the number one prospect in the state of Ohio took on the OHSAA and won. Rock Hill from Hoban, number one player in Ohio in the next cycle. He's come out already and said he's planning on hitting up a 7-on-7 tournament immediately. Trey said all along he's doing this for the future guys behind him. And here, Rock Hill, he's already on it. Rock's already a top 10 overall prospect. He's got an offer from everybody. And he'll be on with me later on this week to talk about his recruiting and this rule and this ruling in his 7-on-7 tournament. But this thing is going to mean a whole lot to a lot of people. Even more so, it was just the right thing to do. Trey McNutt, he's a special safety. He's a special dude. I'm really proud of him. Way to go, buddy. Juck on Bucks out.
I am so happy that a player of Trey McNutt's stature has not just taken the stand that he has on this, but has spoken out as strongly as he has, and his mom. And I'm so happy that they're throwing down the gauntlet and saying they will leave the state and go play football elsewhere, because if that happens in the state of Ohio, the pressure will be incredible. Thanks to you, Trey McNutt. Because not only has this rule kept a lot of high school players from reaching their absolute full potential in football, the sport that they play, it's just ethically wrong. Trey McNutt and a lot of football players don't play spring sports. They're not responsible for your spring sports success or failure. They don't care. It's none of their business. And for you to tell them they can't play football, the sport that they play, because you want to protect someone else's sport is utterly absurd. It never should have been a thing. It shouldn't be a thing now. Trey's mom, Latoya, added, Trey is going to keep fighting, and I hope everyone stands behind him, because I sure will. And that's all I got for tonight. Please like and share this one. Let's support our guy.
Trey McNutt, a football player being recruited by every blue blood in the country with an NFL trajectory, had the audacity to play in a 7-7 football tournament in Miami. And now the best player in our state is suspended for a game this year, his senior year, because of a 7-on-7 football tournament out of state. Sometimes it just takes one person in the right position with some stones to make a big change. And our man McNutt, he's playing again this weekend in another 7-on-7 in LA. McNutt told 24/7 Sports, quote, I think this rule is unacceptable. It's taking control of the kids, and it feels like it's stripping away basic rights. How are you going to tell somebody they can't go and train to play football? At the same time, these other sports, they're able to play AAU and everything, but football can't do it. I'm fighting this rule because it's generally wrong, and it's for the generations after me. The 24/7 article by Steve Wiltfong states, some believe the OHSAA would be up for changing this rule, but the real battle would be with the Ohio State High School Football Coaches Association. According to the article, the majority of the football coaches are still in favor of the current landscape. Is that the case? I don't know. But I know it's unjust. I was stunned 10 years ago that Urban Meyer didn't get more traction with this, that he didn't have the pull to change this, that the OHSAA commissioner had the nerve to say Urban knows what this would do to spring sports, as if it's just a fact that this would decimate spring sports despite contrary evidence in the states surrounding us. Well, Doug Ute, current OHSAA commish, it's on you now, buddy. Your organization just suspended the best player in Ohio for a rule on your books, and this time around it's getting national attention. No logical thinking person could hear Trey McNutt's argument on this and not agree that this is unjust. And can we also say for many kids in Ohio, scratching and clawing for a football scholarship, maybe that extra training, maybe that extra playing time, that new coach, being able to showcase their skill set in front of other coaches in other states could have been the difference. Because the difference is inches for kids that are right on that cut line. What about them? How many of them didn't get that scholarship in the past because of this ridiculous rule? If it's one, then it's one too many. And that one had nothing to do with spring sports or upholding spring sports. Those who play spring sports and support spring sports, that's their responsibility. If you can't get enough players for your spring sports, then I'm sorry. Change the rules, reduce the teams. I don't know what to do. Be creative. Like the states that play football with reduced number of players because they can't get enough 11 men to field a team. That's on the OHSAA to figure that out. That's what you're here for. But that's not on our high school football players to make your job easier. It's a tough problem. I understand, but we don't get to take our tough problems and make them someone else's issue. That's not how it works. And let's talk about the best of the best players in the state of Ohio. The ones that can't travel to LA and Miami while the rest of the country is playing 7-on-7 tournaments and showcasing their skill set. In the current landscape, that could be costing them a whole lot of money, in some cases generational money for them. How do you justify this? Quote, I feel like 7-on-7 has given me experience that not everyone can get, McNutt said. Every single tournament I've been to, it's my first time visiting a new state. I'm building connections with new people. It's like having a new family, and at the same time, I'm getting exposure, which is helping me build status in everything. I don't understand why they don't want us to do it. McNutt's mom, Latoya, said, at this point, it's all or nothing for us. Why should he have to sit out one game? You're making us have to face this decision. The number one DB in Ohio, not to play football in Ohio his senior year.
That's a decision we have to face as a family if the OHSAA doesn't make any changes or concessions to modify this rule. He has a mother that is strong, and we will challenge, and they will not like it. Even if we have to leave the state of Ohio, the challenge is not going away. His athletic director at Shaker Heights, Mike Babinek, told 24/7 Sports, "We have no comment at this time." Well, Mike, the best player in the state suits up for your school. He just got suspended for a rule that you know is wrong because everybody knows it's wrong. So what are you going to do for your guy?